Welcome back. One of the most common forms of pest control are glue boards, also known as glue traps. They're small trays with a highly sticky adhesive used to catch rodents, but many animal activists say these traps are cruel and could even be dangerous to other wildlife. Brian Shapiro, the New York State Director for the Humane Society of the United States, joins me to discuss these traps and some new alternatives. Some viewers may find the following images disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me here today. It's great.
Now, as I mentioned, glue traps may seem like a safer option compared to what many have seen before, like snap traps. But can you just talk about how both of these forms of pest control methods are harmful and cruel to rodents?
As many things with society, the things that are easy, convenient, pervasive, that there's always other effects. So these glue traps, as you described them, which are these boards with a very sticky adhesive surface to them, you can get them almost anywhere in New York City. What we've seen is that the way that it impacts rodents, it is arguably the most cruel form of pest management that there is. Again, just speaking plainly, because it is a graphic topic, the animal will become stuck, suffocate, dehydrate, may break its own limbs or chew its own limbs off. So it's not a matter of, it is in no way a humane form of managing pests. When you look at all of the ways that people use, and rodents have been with us as people throughout history. When you look at the ways that we are using to manage and address sort of an infestation or a conflict that we have with these animals, there really is no humane way to address it, but there are ways that are more inhumane than others. And the glue traps are the most egregious of these, and that's why we're focusing on it.
And I'm really glad that we're focusing on this because I think that almost, especially if you live in New York City, you probably just thought like, oh yeah, like we have mice in our home, we have to get rid of them. But it never really, at least for myself, it never occurred to me like, yeah, like once the mouse is on the trap, what happens after that? Like I understand that they're not dead, when they're on the trap, so they are like enduring a lot of suffering. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
The suffering that the animals go through, it's really quite unimaginable. In addition to, as I mentioned, sort of the animal twisting to try to escape from, if one can just imagine what it would be like to be trapped for an extended period of time until you die. The adhesive material can get into the eyes, the nasal passages, cause suffocation. So again, it is the most inhumane type of management that there is. So people need to consider that as consumers. Again, back to the choices that we have. This is something that I would hope people will take a wider look at and think, to your point, geez, what happens to that animal? What is the end result of my buying this convenient item, putting it down? And is it really going to solve the problem? Because we'll talk in a little bit about holistically, there are many more ready to come in.
Right. Now, in addition to harming mice, can you talk about how glue traps can also be a danger to other wildlife and small animals?
Absolutely. Previously, the president of Puppy Kitty New York City had shared with me a video of a cat that had a glue trap stuck to it. We have received at the Humane Society of the United States snakes, bats, small animals, even children, have these things stuck to them. As I said before, when we try to find the most convenient, easy, cheapest solution, there's always another side to that. And these are items that stay in the environment and can affect other wildlife, just like rodenticides. It stays in the environment, and then another animal could eat that animal, the mouse that has been poisoned, and it goes on and doesn't fully solve the problem.
Now, I wanted to talk about this because on my way home one day, I saw there was a small bird on a glue trap outside, and I've never seen anything like that before, so I was just so shocked to see that, and actually like Googled it when I went home, and it's a very common issue that happens. What should somebody do if they see that? Is there a way to free these animals, and
Yeah.
how can you do so without harming yourself or the animal?
It's funny, just as we're talking, they're like little landmines that are just left around and indiscriminately just, tagging itself onto various wildlife. It's been known that one way to free an animal from a glue trap, ideally one would be able to find a wildlife rehabilitator, but we live in the real world where one may not be available.
Or in the city?
Or in the city,
Yeah.
or a veterinarian. A cooking oil, like a vegetable oil, an olive oil. If someone is to do this, wear gloves, be very careful. It can be applied to the animal, oil up the animal, and then the animal can slowly be released from that. And again, in an ideal situation, that's very stressful for the animal and can affect their ability to stay warm if there's a way for the animal to recover. So again, in an ideal world, or if someone finds wildlife stuck in them, that's one of the ways that I understand people have been able to address this.
And would you encourage somebody to attempt this? Let's say they do care. My brother was telling me like, oh, you might actually hurt the animal more than save it, if you don't know what you're doing. Would you encourage somebody to try that? What would be your advice?
I think it's all based on what we are comfortable with. It's something that I have friends who have been able to do that. Again, in New York City, we run into these things, we see these things. So I would say based on your comfort level, but always be careful. Always remember, this is a wild animal. You don't want to get bit. But we do what we can to alleviate the suffering that we see in our lives.
Now, I do have some good news. West Hollywood was the first city in the United States to ban glue traps. Can you just talk about, maybe what were some things that probably led to that?
You bring up a good point, and you could never point to why something happens politically for one reason, as they say the stars align for different reasons. Quickly, I'll give you an example. In New York State was the first state to prohibit the convenient surgery of declawing cats. I've been with the Humane Society for 11 years now, and that I'm still amazed at how things came together. Depends on the advocates in the community, the knowledge that they have, knowing your council members or your legislators, and then getting it through the process. So I think just the stars were right for that to happen. No pun intended for West Hollywood. The stars were right for that to come about. And I do know in New York City, the most effective animal protection organization based in the city, that's Voters for Animal Rights, VFAR, they are considering legislation to introduce to the city council to address the sale of these animals, and hopefully they will have the same fortune.
Now, I want to talk about how glue boards, if anyone's like wondering, like, what do you do next? Or like, what are some things that we can do? Could you first just talk about how they aren't really an effective way to control rodent population, especially here in New York City where this is a problem?
It's interesting. It's not just the advocacy community or the Humane Society of the United States saying this. The Center for Disease Control strongly recommends against the use of glue traps because the animal can defecate, urinate, there's blood involved. So this is something that is recognized by the Center for Disease Control not to use. Until we find a way, again to use the term holistic, to address such things as, when we put our trash out at night in the city or in municipalities, we're basically putting out a 24/7 buffet. And these animals have been a part of our culture and society just, again, throughout history. Until we find a way, as some European countries and municipalities have done, to seal that in, to have containers. My niece, when she was young, it would be just like breakfast times, an explosion of Fruit Loops everywhere. Even in our homes, we have to be able to realize, like, it's not easy to fully clean up or to seal where the animals might come in. I mean, a rodent can come in through something the size of a quarter. And that's something that my father has a house upstate. We tried to figure that out, put in like a steel mesh to try to seal these places up. So It is not something that's easy, but the alternative, I would recommend you take the time to try to do the best that you can, and the city should be doing the same thing too.
Now, if you do have a rodent in your home, what is the best way, or something that is not as cool, to make sure that it's not in your house?
Like I said earlier, all houses, all homes are different. I've lived in the city, I've lived upstate before. There are traps that you can do to re-release the animal, which might not be ideal for New York City. As I said at the beginning of our discussion, there is no fully humane way to do this, but we have to make choices on what are the most egregious and cruel ways, and that would be one of them. Bridging back to making sure that our food is sealed, contained, doing the best we can to have either a clean home, seal things up. And I understand that the city now has a rat czar. I know that the mayor's been looking at this, and various administrations have as well. What can we do to try to keep the streets clean, have the Department of Sanitation find different solutions based perhaps on European models? So this is something that's not going to be solved overnight, but as consumers, we can have choices and make a difference.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that. I wanted to ask, how do we make sure that this is something that's accessible to everybody, like looking for these holes, or looking for these entry spots so that the mice can't get in? How do we make sure that everybody has access to that type of work?
Well, the fact that we're here today and talking about that, public education is very important. I hate to refer to Google, but you can always try to find out. There's a lot of information there. You can we have some information available at humanesociety.org, and to look up glue traps. So there are ways to take a common sense approach. If you see where the mice, usually you can tell where they are coming from. Maybe it's behind a baseboard or so. If you have a responsive landlord that might be able to help with that, or someone handy around the house. I'm not very handy, so I would find someone. Try to seal things up. Educate yourself, because at the end of the day, just throwing that glue trap, that little landmine down, it's not going to solve the problem, because the source of the food is still there, and they will keep coming back.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining us, especially, after what I've seen. I'm happy that other people are talking about it, and this was already on people's radar. So thank you so much for joining us and having this
conversation.
conversation.
Great opportunity. Thank you for having me.
To keep up with the Humane Society and the work that they do, please go to their website at www.humanesociety.org. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.